Hello to all you big children out there. Konnichiwa and welcome to the Tokyo Joshi Pod, your weekly dose of everything TJPW. I'm your host, Andy Zyke, and today we've got a second monthly bonus episode for April, the second bonus episode this week alone. If you're new here, you probably have no idea how the schedule goes after this week. Well, weekly Tokyo Joshi Pod episodes release every Friday, covering the current TJPW shows and news within the TJPW world. I release these bonus episodes once a month, or I guess technically twice in this case, and we cover a variety of different topics from interviews to on-site recaps, deep dives, reviews of old shows from TJPW, a whole host of different things. Well, today's episode is going to be a very special one. We are going to look back at my experience in Las Vegas from just a couple of weeks ago. Vegas was an absolutely incredible time, and kind of similar to the Texas bonus episode that we did, this is going to be a very personal, heavy episode about my experiences traveling to Vegas, around Vegas, the number of shows that I took in while I was there, of course, all of the meet and greets at the shows, at Wrestlecon, all of the friends that I bumped into, and of course, all of the delicious food I ate. Of course, that is a big thing in Las Vegas, so you know we're going to talk about some food. Before we begin, though, I want to just give a couple of quick plugs to check out a few of our most recent episodes. On Monday, I released a monthly bonus featuring my interview with Ref Mike Fullylove, chatting all about his intro to TJPW, what goes into being a pro wrestling referee, and his upcoming trip to Japan. That's super exciting news for Mike. I think he actually added a date as well, so really cool to see that. Very happy for Mike. Also, in our most recent mainline episode, I believe it was number 32, Alexis Lee stopped by and we chatted all about her background as Singapore's first female professional wrestler, talked a lot about her gear and the inspiration behind that, and just trying to grow both herself and Southeast Asian wrestling as a whole. Both of these conversations, the one with Ref Mike and the one with Alexis, are both really great conversations. We cover a variety of different things, obviously from different points of view, referee and a wrestler, but I highly encourage you to listen to both of them. I think you all will enjoy them and just enjoy hearing different perspectives from two people in and around TJPW and from two different perspectives within the wrestling industry. With that out of the way, place your bets on red and split an octuple bypass burger with Wakana Uehara because it's time to relive Vegas Mania Week. So I'll start with Tuesday. This trip began for me on Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening. I drove into Las Vegas after I was done working. For me, coming from Southern California, it's only about a 3.5 hour drive, actually a little bit less than that. So it's very easy. I was able to just do it in one shot. It's very short compared to driving to and from Texas. Got into the hotel early evening, just kind of settled in. I had some family with me again. I had my dog with me again. I didn't do much this night. Like I say, just kind of settled in, had a chill night, preparing for the week ahead, the madness that was to come. But I do want to mention that for dinner, I ate at Lolo's Chicken and Waffles. Lolo's Chicken and Waffles was recommended to me, and I have to say, it was very good. They had really great mac and cheese, really great cornbread, and you were able to get Kool-Aid as your drink, which I haven't had a Kool-Aid, I think, since I was 9 years old. So a really great meal. I ate way too much food. That's going to be a trend here, but a great meal to get things started on Tuesday. Waking up on Wednesday, of course, I was super excited to just get everything going. I actually started out with some more food. I didn't start out with wrestling from the get-go. I had a brunch reservation at a brunch buffet called Wicked Spoon in the Cosmo. It's one that's very highly rated online. It pops up on the best Vegas buffet lists that you find. So I had to make sure I tried Wicked Spoon. I'd only heard really great things. Of course, the food was delicious. They had all types of breakfast foods, a couple of lunch options as well. It was well worth the cost. I think it was only $50 per person, which by Vegas standards and by Vegas buffet standards, that's quite a deal for the quality of the food that we were getting. If you're unfamiliar with Vegas, or perhaps you've never visited Las Vegas, buffets are a very big thing there. Each of the hotels on the Strip, some of the hotels off the Strip, all have their own buffets. Some of them have different like themes or gimmicks to them, whether it be brunch or seafood or, whatever it might be, meats or whatever. Probably the cream of the crop buffet is the one at Caesars, which is Bacchanal. For context, the Bacchanal is $100 per person, but the food is incredible, and there's 1.5 million different types of foods and types of cuisines. So when I say $50 for all of this breakfast food, kind of puts it a little bit more into perspective of just how much of a deal that is. But an excellent, excellent buffet at the Wicked Spoon in the Cosmo. Highly recommend it if you do ever happen to find yourself in Las Vegas. Had a little bit of downtime in the room after breakfast, just worked on some social content, did some prep for the pod, and then I headed over. About 3 p.m. was the start time for my first show. So I headed up to the Bazaar Bar, which is maybe like 10 minutes north of the Strip. It's not quite in downtown. It's in what I think they call the Arts District. I was up there because my first show was Pandemonium Pro Wrestling's Whatever Forever. I was really, really excited about this one. Friend of the show, friend of mine, Nick Hart, is the booker for Pandemonium Pro, and he had put together such an incredible card. Of course, I'm going, one, to support my friend first and foremost, but once he started announcing names and booking matches, it made it all the easier to buy that ticket. The venue here was really, really cool. It was a bar that was on the second story of the building that it was in. There was a beautiful deck looking out over the Arts District, lots of space. There was a bar that had like both an inside and an outside component to it. The lobby area where that bar was where they were doing like the meet and greets, some merch selling. That was where they were checking your tickets. And then a little bit further into the venue, there was what I would describe as like the dance floor and the stage area. I guess that's where they have different performances. That was where they put the ring. So the ring was in the middle of that area. The seats were around it. And then the stage was what functioned as the entrance ramp. I ended up standing kind of just right inside that inner doorway. Despite having a front row seat for this, the venue was such an intimate venue. I had a great view standing. I think it was like 2 rows behind. So there really wasn't like a bad seat in this venue. It was such a small venue that I was like, you know what? I don't need to be right up close and in the action. Like I'll comfortably sit a few rows behind and let some of my other friends take in those front row seats. And maybe you just have a little bit of extra space up there. That's always welcome at these wrestling shows. Speaking of the friends I was with, want to just give a few quick shout outs. Obviously, Nick Hart Editing, the booker of this show, put on one heck of an event. He was so calm, cool, and collected. It was so great just to catch up with him. More on Nick in just a minute. Some other friends that I had there, John, Chris, Blitzball champ Jason Ingram, if you're familiar with him, the wrestling enthusiast Eric Peralta. Always great to see Eric. Eric was on like a personal mission to like set his most attended shows in a certain amount of time. I think he was trying for like 18 or 19. Forgive me, Eric, if I'm mixing that up. And then, of course, good friend of the show, Matt Turner from Talk Joshi and the World of Joshi Podcasting Network. Spent so much time this weekend with Matt. This will not be the last time you hear about Matt and my exploits that we had. Let's call it that. But so lovely to see Matt. Haven't seen him in person since Vegas last year. So this show is probably the more interesting thing that you want to hear about. The Pandemonium show had like 9 or 10 matches on it. I'll be honest, I didn't know many of the wrestlers that were on it, but I came away like very, very impressed. I didn't think there was a bad match on the show. There were some really great tag team matchups, 6-person tag matchups. In particular, there was a singles contest between Daisuke Sasaki from DDT and Jaya Jewel. I think he goes by the Crazy Cajun. Those two fought like all the way out of the ring and over to the bar. There was also a scramble match with like 6 different guys in it. That was really cool as well. The matches I was most excited for here was Alexis Lee taking on Jocelyn Navarro. Pretty good matchup. Of course, I was pulling for Alexis because I was scheduled to interview Alexis. There's a story to that. We'll dive in there too. But I was pulling for Alexis. She was unable to pull out the victory though, although she did look pretty good in defeat. The other match, Natsupoi from Stardom versus Johnnie Robbie. One heck of a match. I think that's going to top the weekend match lineups for a number of people for sure. Poi won that matchup, but both of them are so ridiculously talented. Probably unsurprising that Poi won, but just one heck of a match, one heck of a way to start off the week. And then the main event here was a three-way matchup between Amira, who we've spoken a little bit about on the pod because Amira took part in the TJPW Seattle show from a couple of years back, and then she was just up on the Vancouver tour for Vancouver Premiere. She was defending her title against the Kick Demon, Janai Kai, who is just a ridiculously impressive wrestler, and Saya Ida from Stardom, another ridiculously impressive wrestler. I kind of felt like Ida was the odd one out here, that she wouldn't be the one to kind of factor into the fall, and sure enough, Amira retained by pinning Janai Kai. Very hard-hitting matchup between like three super muscular women. After this show, Pandemonium was also doing meet and greets for Natsupoi and Saya Ida. So I did make sure to meet Natsupoi here. I did actually meet Natsupoi a second time. We'll get to that too. We're going to get to a lot on this episode, so bear with me. But meeting Poi here was really a dream come true. I was so excited that she made it to America. I'm a huge, huge Natsupoi fan. When I first got into Japanese wrestling and Joshi wrestling, Natsupoi was one of the first competitors that I kind of latched onto. And, you know, I wore my Poi shirt, had to wear my Poi shirt, and we had a very simple interaction. She just was excited that I was wearing the shirt. We talked about the shirt. We talked a little bit about her match. And then we took our picture, we hit the Poi pose, and then we hit each other with the bye Poi, which dream come true, honestly. To be able to say bye Poi to Natsupoi, that was like something to cross off the bucket list. In addition to Poi and Ida, Seira was also there, just kind of like hanging out. I think she was seconding or just supporting the two of them. And I kind of fell into watching the show alongside Seira as I was standing in that doorway into that inner room. Somebody came up behind me, and sure enough, it was Seira. And I thought it was somebody that was trying to pass me by, to be honest with you. So I turned around to let them go by and awkwardly locked eyes with Seira. And I just gave her this awkward hello, and she said hi. And then we just watched the show together, which was a delight. It was really funny to, not like haha funny, but interesting funny to see her watch these matches and over my shoulder, just hear her oohing and eyeing and almost like mentally taking notes. It just, that kind of stuff stands out to me. I think that's so interesting to like see a wrestler watch a wrestling match and see what they are interacting with and what they are responding to. So that was the Pandemonium show. After that show was when I was scheduled to interview Alexis Lee. Long story short, her meet and greet line was huge, which is great for her. It was not great for me, which doesn't really matter at the end of the day, right? She was out there making her money, and her line was just too long that it ended up running into her prep time for the next event, the Unapologetic show, which was at this same venue around 7 p.m. So the timing, it just didn't work out to do the interview. I want to give another shout out to my friend and the booker here, Nick Hart. Nick was the one helping me coordinate this interview, and he was just an absolute professional with it. On top of coordinating this interview with Alexis, Nick was so generous and just spent some time with me catching up. We talked for so long here, it was so awesome to speak with Nick and just catch up with him. I hadn't seen Nick since 2024 Mania, which was in Philadelphia. And he was just so kind. He was introducing me to a handful of people. I got to meet the new Texas Pro booker. I think his name is Parm. I might be mistaking a few people, but also met a guy named JW who was making a documentary about indie wrestling, which that's a really cool endeavor. I thought that was kind of cool. And then he also introduced me to Jaya Jewel as well. Super nice guy. Just really hardworking wrestler. I think a lot of indie wrestlers are super hardworking for Vegas, or not Vegas week, but Mania week in general, wherever it may be. Just a big shout out to Hart for being just a stand-up guy. Didn't end up getting to the Alexis interview, of course, because she did have this Apologetic Pro show, which was at this same venue at 7 p.m. I was not planning to stay for this event, but basically Hart and I just ended up chatting the night away, and I just kind of stuck around for it. So it ended up working out in the long run because I was able to meet up with Alexis, coordinate a new time for our interview, and shout outs to Alexis again for participating in the interview, coming on the show. She was so flexible and accommodating and kind, just a lovely, lovely person. We, Hart and I, ended up watching Alexis's match. ELP, El Phantasmo, was also on this Unapologetic show, so got to watch his match. Also, Tiger Mask was here, and I think this was his final American match on his retirement road. I'm not too familiar with New Japan and like the history of New Japan, but I know that a lot of people were very excited to see Tiger Mask, and truthfully, it turned out to be one heck of a show. I intended to leave around like 6:30, 7 p.m. I got out of there at 10:30 p.m. And you're probably thinking, whatever, it's Las Vegas, right? Fair. My game plan was to record the podcast that night. So I ended up, instead of recording at like a decent hour, 7 or 8 p.m., I didn't get back to the room until probably 11. And then by the time I ate some leftovers, I didn't record until midnight. And I think I ended up recording until like 1:30 in the morning, fell asleep around 2. So a fun show. Like that to me was well worth delaying what I had to do to be able to watch some really great wrestling, spend some time with some people that I truthfully see maybe once a year if I'm lucky. That to me holds so much more value over just figuring out when I can record and when I can do things. Like, in other words, I will make my personal stuff work to be able to have experiences like that. So both of these shows this day, the Pandemonium show and the Unapologetic show, a great way to get started. Thursday, another super packed day. Quick morning at the hotel. Had to head over to TJPW a little bit on the earlier side just to scope some things out and kind of get a feel for it. TJPW was over at the Palms Casino at the Pearl Theater, same venue they were in last year. Their show was starting around 11. The Palms is an off-strip casino, but it's pretty nice for what it is, and they have free parking, which is like a huge plus in Las Vegas. Before this show, recorded a brief little preview with Matt from Talk Joshi. That was fun to do a little bit of like an in-person collab. Also met up with a few other friends of the show. Jason from the String 6 Splash YouTube channel. Justin Stein, who is a writer over at Rasura Magazine. A couple good buddies, John, Chris, Hendricks. Met up with Blitzball champ again, Jason Ingram. A couple listeners of the show as well, Brian and Brandon. Shoutouts to them. This was a really good show from TJPW. Of course, we had Namba here. Always great to see Namba. The Up Girls performed Love You More. Of course, I had my Raku tee with me from Texas. I was holding up my Raku tee. She gave me a little wave again. I was sitting opposite the hard cam, so if you see a guy in a bright yellow shirt as you're watching this event, that's your boy. I was sitting with good friend Blitzball champ Jason Ingram as we took this show in. I'm not going to really go in depth on all of these matches, just going to quickly hit through them. The Toga Udatsukami versus Uber Eats tag, really good showing for Toga in her debut. Uber Eats very, very over with the crowd in America. The 6-woman tag, the Love Triangle, going up against Bumping Gritters and Alexis Lee. A lot of shenanigans, of course. Raku's pillow. There was a dice block. Ref Mike had a really cool like remote gag that he did with Palm. Just really great creativity and really good storytelling. The 3-way matchup between Yamashita, Watanabe, and Mizuki just tore the house down. They fought all over the venue. They kicked the crap out of each other. The International Princess title, Sakura, I thought looked wonderful here. She's really coming together as a character. I thought this was a bit of a coming out party for her. The Princess tag titles, people were really not happy with the IInspiration winning. A friend of the show, Chris, was sitting front row. He had a sign that said, if the IInspiration win, we riot. And they basically took the sign and ripped it up. Like, really cool moment for Chris. The IInspiration know how to work a room. I will give them that. I've spoken about the IInspiration before. I think they fit in really, really well with TJPW. And afterwards, the Bumping Gritters were in front of me seconding the match. And as the IInspiration were walking out, I said, Bumping Gritters, go get those tag belts. And the two of them were like, yes, okay. So we'll see if they're the ones to dethrone the IInspiration. The Princess of Princess title, Arai overcame the mountain that is JRod. I actually got a chance to meet JRod later in the weekend, who was telling me like a little bit about this contest. Also talked a lot with Mike about this contest too. I won't like peel the curtain back or anything like that, but it was just interesting to hear different perspectives on like how a match is put together, each person's roles, just things that I don't normally see as I watch a match as a fan. So just interesting conversations to have with people who were part of this contest. But overall, a wonderful show. They closed it with a group photo. They put the meet and greets in the lobby of the venue, which was like not ideal. It was a very small, kind of oddly shaped lobby. And of course, it was very busy, very crowded. So the lines were kind of on top of one another. The talent from Maple Leaf Pro were kind of entering during the meet and greet. It just was awkward. It was very packed in there. I did end up meeting 5 of the TJPW women here. I'll talk about these ones a little bit more in depth since we are a TJPW show. Started out with Suzume. This was my second time meeting Suzume. Very, very friendly. Just asked if I enjoyed the show. I congratulated her on getting her International Princess title belt back, and she was super, super excited. She was clutching that over her shoulder. And I said, it's the second time. You're the one of few to do it 2 times. And she's like, yes. Very, very, you could tell she was very proud and very excited to have that belt. Nothing too much more to my interaction with Suzume. Her English is okay, surprisingly. It's not terrible. I just didn't have much on the agenda to say to her. Next up, I met Yuki Arai, and I had to remind her of our Texas meeting where I spoke with her about Dekamori Hunter. And like the minute I brought it up, she was like, oh my God, yes, I totally remember that. Because like how many people were referencing that show to her, right? I brought up that she told me in, I think it was Houston, she said that she was going to go to Grand Princess, win the belt, and bring it to Vegas. And I said, you did it. Look what you did. And she was very proud of being able to win. So I congratulated her on defending against JRod. She asked me where I was from and told her Los Angeles. And then she said she hadn't been to Los Angeles in quite some time, but we were speaking a little bit about that. She said she was in LA like a number of years ago with SKE48. And I was doing some research because I was like, I wonder if there's like a concert or something. Apparently, I don't know if this is accurate research. Apparently, SKE48, I think it was like 2019 or something, flew over to LA to film a music video. And I guess that was the last time she was here. But she did say she wants to come back to LA at some point. Very, very friendly person. You could tell she's someone that just has the right mindset as a champion. I think I said this when we talked on the Texas recap show as well, but she really makes an effort to communicate. Her English is not the best, but she's definitely listening to what you're saying, trying to compute it, and making an effort to communicate with her fans. And of course, you know I had to meet Raku. Raku's the best. Raku right away remembered me from Texas. I don't know how she couldn't because I met her 8,000 times. I showed her that I brought the t-shirt and she was like, yes, I saw it. Tried to give you the wave. She did ask where I was from as well. I was telling her about Los Angeles. She asked how long it took me to get to Vegas. And I was like, not too long, only about a 3-hour drive. I was doing a lot of these meet and greets with Blitzball champ Jason Ingram. And we were kind of talking together and she's like, oh, is this your friend? And I said, yes, good friend of mine. She asked where he was from. Blitz is from the North Carolina area. So he was like much longer, like 5-hour plane ride. She was like, oh, far away. I was like, Raku, what are you talking about? You clearly came the farthest. Like, how long was your flight? She said it was 12 hours. And I was like, oh my gosh. Well, you must have had a terrific nap on the plane. And right away, she said no. And I was like, oh my God, is my perception of Raku being shattered here? She said that she really enjoys reading and watching movies on the plane, but that she just loves flying. And so I said, okay, well, obviously we know you're all about trains. Do you like trains or planes more? And believe it or not, she said right now, airplanes. I was shook. I couldn't believe it. When it came time to do our photograph, she wanted to do an airplane pose. So we have this cute little airplane pose that we're doing, just basically held our hands out like wings. And then I kind of closed my interaction and I said, hey, you wrestled on the Shinkansen. That must have been a dream come true, that bullet train match. Next time, we're going to get you to wrestle on an airplane. And she just was laughing. She was like, oh my God, that sounds insane. But I said this last time, Raku is so lovely. She really takes the time to have a conversation with everybody that walks up to her, just like a genuine and a lovely person to talk to. Similarly, ended up going over to Sayuri Namba, and the first thing out of Namba's mouth when I appeared was, "Long time no see." So that was great to be remembered from Texas by Sayuri Namba. Another dream come true, right? We briefly talked about the Texas tour. I congratulated her on the Vancouver shows that she worked so hard on putting together. I reminded her that I do the show, and she was like, "I still have the sticker. I put it on my desk in Vancouver," which was like, that's awesome, man. That's so cool. I did mention to her the photograph that she took with the Canadian geese. And I said, they never came to the Vancouver shows. What was that all about? And she said, no, it's a good thing they didn't come because so many people told me that they were so dangerous. And she's like, I didn't believe them. But once I started doing all this research, she was like, oh my God, I thought I messed up by getting too close to these animals. She's like, so it was a great thing that the Canadian geese didn't come to the Vancouver premiere shows. Her and I did speak a little briefly about potentially doing an interview at some point in the future. So card subject to change, as we say in the wrestling world. Nothing confirmed, but going to do my best to make that happen for you all. I think that would be a truly awesome conversation. I think that Namba has such lovely insights and experiences. So going to do my best to bring that all to you. Cross your fingers, do a rain dance for me. We'll make it happen. We did take a picture together. And as we were getting ready, she said, what pose should we do? And I was like, oh, any pose is fine. She's like, let's do a Las Vegas pose. I said, okay, what's a Las Vegas pose? And she said, I don't know. So we ended up doing something totally different. She said in Japan, we have pachinko, and there's a certain pose for that. So we did this pachinko pose, but we had such a lovely couple of photographs because it's just her and I having this great moment together. Namba is someone I think is so hardworking, somebody who's incredibly polite and professional, and just obviously her English she's basically fluent, but just a lovely person to meet and talk to. Highly, highly recommend. If you have a chance to meet and speak with Sayuri Namba, definitely do so. And then the final person that I met on Thursday was Himawari. I did wear my Himawari shirt this day. And of course, right away, she was like, oh my gosh, my shirt. And I mentioned that I had seen her in Los Angeles at an MLW show. That's where I got the shirt from her. And I said, I was at the show where you faced off against Johnnie Kai. And the second I said that, her eyes went super wide. And she was like, oh, Johnnie Kai. I remember in that match, Himawari got her butt kicked, like literally was getting her butt kicked. I did ask her if she had any more of like the hand-drawn squares that she made for Vancouver. She like hand drew different Himawari expressions on these squares, and they looked so cool. Unfortunately for me, she had sold out of them in Vancouver. And I said, you know what? Just go home tonight, drop a few more, bring them back to the meet and greet tomorrow. She was like, no. Himawari, I think, is really cool because she hand makes all of her merch. Like, that's incredible. She had badges and wristbands and like bracelets, I mean to say, some hairpins, things for your hair ties. She makes it all. That's awesome that everything she has, you get a handcrafted piece of merchandise. Himawari was also nice enough to sign a BBM card that I have. I actually just got the BBM card prior to this show because friend of the show, Chris, the same Chris who had his IInspiration sign ripped up, was just doing this really lovely gesture before the TJPW show, giving out some BBM cards that he had. And it was great. He was just having people reach into a bag and kind of blind grab a card. Lucky for me, I grabbed Himawari, who's one of my favorites, and Himawari so gracious enough to be able to sign the card as well. So just a cool little extra thing. Himawari is surprisingly good at English for only coming over to America a handful of times. But again, another lovely, lovely person to have a conversation with. After the show was over was when I finally linked up with Alexis Lee one more time, recorded our interview together, just like one heck of a cool person, one heck of a nice person. Alexis is so friendly and outgoing. Like I said, she was so flexible with her time. I think that she's someone who's very hardworking, very humble, just like a cool person. And I think that comes across in the interview that I have out there. Just someone that's very admirable. I have a lot of respect for someone who can come from a foreign country, come alone from a foreign country and just put in the work and work their butt off to succeed. So nothing but kind things I have to say about Alexis Lee. After the show, grabbed some lunch with a couple of friends. We actually saw some of the TJPW girls in the food court, and I just thought it was a bit ironic to see Wakana walking through the food court, kind of scoping out her next meal. Also bumped into Uda Takami and Miyu Watanabe while I was in the line for Panda Express. So that's something you don't see every day, right? After a brief pit stop back at the hotel just to kind of recharge, just kind of decompress, for 20, 30 minutes, ended up heading on up to West Coast Pro, West Coast versus the World, which started around 7 p.m. back up at the Bazaar Bar, the same venue from Wednesday. I had intended to record like an instant reaction of TJPW and just honestly didn't get around to it. Was so busy and just living in the moment that's why that instant reaction came out so much later than I initially anticipated it to. The West Coast show itself had a couple of great matches. Aja Kong faced off against, I think it was Miko Alana. Fun match, of course, Aja Kong won. The really cool piece of this, Senka Akatsuki was scheduled to face off against Danny Luna, and Danny Luna had to pull out at the last minute, and West Coast kind of billed this as a 5-minute exhibition match, Senka Akatsuki versus somebody, and you don't want to miss who it is. Of course, everybody immediately was going to Sari because we knew of the whole Sari flying over from Japan after wrestling the same day. She was scheduled to be on the show later that night for Marvelous. So we're like, maybe she's just going to arrive a little bit early and go one-on-one with Senka. Well, that idea was not what happened. It turns out it was Chris Hero, which was not on my bingo card, but the place went nuts when Chris came out. Of course, they teased it without playing music, and then Chris comes out and like just an incredible 5-minute exhibition. He is beating the crap out of Senka, but because it's Senka, Senka is not giving up and not dying and just keeps fighting and fighting and fighting. They go to a 5-minute draw. Senka goes to bow out of respect, and Chris just blows her off. And of course, he's healing it up to the crowd, playing the a-hole. The crowd is booing him like crazy. He milks it all the way back up to the entrance stage, turns around, comes on back, and tells the ring announcer, fine, 5 more minutes. And of course, the place goes ballistic. They end up going 4.5 minutes, same type of a deal. Chris just kicking Senka's butt, Senka refusing to stay down, and Chris ends up winning with a pile driver, I think it was, around 4.5 minutes. And afterwards, Senka bows again, and Chris finally bows, and then gets up, raises her hand, and they hug, and they just share a moment. But like, this was perfect. It was booked. First of all, it was booked last minute, which is all the more impressive, but they told a full story. Chris had a full character arc in 10 minutes. Just like terrific work, terrific storytelling from everybody involved. The atmosphere was insane for all of this, and it really replicated last year's Aja Kong versus Senka match from the Marvelous show, which was one that was so talked about coming out of Vegas Mania 2025. I felt like this really encapsulated that spirit once again. There were a number of other good matches on this show too. I think this is free on West Coast Pro's YouTube, so highly recommend you check this one out. The main event of this, Johnnie Robbie took on Mio Momino from Marvelous, and they just tore the house down. They got the crowd right back into it. They were wrestling all throughout the crowd, and Mio ended up winning the West Coast Pro Women's title, which was super, super surprising. But I believe Johnnie is heading over to Marvelous either in May or something like that, so maybe they'll just flip the belt right back onto Johnnie in Japan. After West Coast Pro, just kind of hung around on the balcony a little bit with some friends. There was maybe like 30 minutes to an hour before the Marvelous show began. It was like 10:30 or so. Ended up taking in this show with Matt Turner from Talk Joshi. Just a heck of a time with Matt. We had a blast on this at this Marvelous show. As he likes to put it in the Stardom world, we got Micah'd together, which was just so much fun. His wife was there as well, just a lovely person. Really fun just to have, just to watch a show with a professional wrestler and like see it from a wrestler's point of view. Again, marvelous here. Terrific show. They brought all of their main wrestlers over. Sora Ayami faced off against Maya World. Sora won, which was crazy. So much fun. So awesome to see Sora win. To me, Sora is like so underrated. I think she is like the Shino Suzuki of Marvelous, just the person that's in the shadow of Senka all the time and is just a little more like mild-mannered, but so talented and so great and so underrated. Speaking of Senka, we had the rematch, Senka and Aja Kong. They blew the roof off of this place. Halfway through this match, Senka's getting her butt whipped. Who comes out to support her? Chris Hero. They tied it back to the West Coast Pro match. People went nutso when he walked out. And about, 3 minutes or so into this match, I turn to a friend of mine and I say, what if she wins? Like, that's the story here, right? They had this wonderful 5-minute match last year where Senka refused to give up until Aja finally put her away in 5 minutes. Well, the story is, in the rematch, Senka gets her revenge. And sure enough, Senka pinned Aja Kong, which is incredible. But this was just a perfect ending to this story. They had a full arc between West Coast and Marvelous, right, with Chris Hero getting involved. They tied back so nicely to that. Of course, they tie back to last year's matchup, and Senka is able to slay the giant that is Aja Kong. Just a terrific, terrific moment and match, and it's just simple. It was simple storytelling. It was a simple story, but it was perfectly executed. Immediately following, Magenta ran out, and we ended up getting an impromptu tag match between Magenta and Aja Kong and Senka. That was wild. They were all over the crowd getting beaten up. Senka and Aja won. Also on the Marvelous show was Ai Hozan, and I think her name is Achika Miyabi. I might be mispronouncing her name. The main event here, though, was that Spark Rush team coming from Japan, taking on Mio Momono and Johnnie Robbie. And like the place went bananas when Spark Rush came out. All 4 of these people were just going non-stop. Sari going from a heck of a 3-way match in Japan, getting like a 12-hour flight, wrestling on the very same day, just like absurdly impressive. You wouldn't fault Sari for kind of phoning it in here, but she did the opposite. All 4 of these ladies were just going a mile a minute, and Matt Turner leans over to me during this and he was like, the pace of this match is insane. Like, they haven't stopped since they came out. They probably went like 15 minutes or so. This was like 1 a.m, though. They got a standing ovation. It was just an incredible, incredible matchup. A hell of a show, a hell of a doubleheader with West Coast Pro, just out of this world stuff. They did do some meet and greets after. I got a chance to meet Mio Momono, just congratulated her on winning that belt. She asked where I was from. We talked a little bit about her time in Los Angeles a few years back with West Coast Pro, and she was encouraging me to go to Japan, go to Corcoran Hall. I did ask Sora Ayami to take a quick picture, and we did. Sora had like surprisingly great English, so that was a really pleasant surprise. Met with Sari, and of course, Sari had the longest line. All of the Marvelous girls were at one table, but Sari definitely had the most people in line to meet her. I was looking at my photo and I met Sari. It was like 1:42 in the morning. I was dead. I can only imagine like what she was feeling, but she was lovely and chipper as ever, despite her travel. I was very honored to meet her. That's basically like what I was telling her. I did see Sari once before as Sari Bomb in the Sukaban promotion, but this was the first time seeing like the real deal Sari. And then also met Maria. Maria was hanging over at the bar, and like it was really great because Maria was just kind of in the gimmick. As I walked over, I was like, Maria, is it okay if we get a quick picture? And she just kind of rolled her eyes. She's like, oh, fine. The experience that you want to have when you meet someone like Maria. Rico was nowhere to be found. I'm not too sure where Rico was for the meet and greets. I did want to meet Ai Hozan, but I was just at the wrong spot in line by the time all the girls came out, and I really wasn't about to double back and get in the long line again. And then I did not meet Senka, but I had previously met Senka once before, so I felt like I had checked that box. I also previously met Rico as well, so I felt satisfied outside of just missing I this time around. I was exhausted. I left this show around like 2:30 in the morning. I had to stop at McDonald's because I was just like starving. I hadn't eaten since lunch and I was like delirious. I didn't even remember eating the food. Fell asleep at like 4 in the morning. But honestly though, a tremendous day between TJPW and all of the meet and greets, the collabs that I did, the friends that I saw, and then just one hell of a 6-hour block of wrestling from like 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. between West Coast and Marvelous. Like an incredible, incredible experience. I think that's going to be imprinted in my head for a long time to come. On Friday, woke up ridiculously early around 7 o'clock. So I got like maybe 4 hours of sleep at best because the TJPW meet and greets were at 11:30. And I was actually scheduled to meet up with Jason from the String Six Splash YouTube channel to collab a little bit. And I had to edit the podcast before I ended up doing any of that. So I was dead to the world this day. I ended up heading on over to the Palms around 10 o'clock, recorded with Jason, and then did the TJPW meet and greet around 11:30. Ended up meeting 4 TJPW wrestlers. Toga confirmed it was her first time here in America. I asked her what she thought. She said America is really cool, having a great experience here. I asked her if she liked our food here in America, and she said everything is so big. And she said, I went to get a drink the other day. The drink was like humongous, and she gestured with her hands. And then she said, in Japan, it's this, and she had a much smaller thing. Toga's English was surprisingly pretty good for someone who is coming to America for the first time, but I think she had a great time. I know a lot of people were very, very excited to meet Toga. Next up, I stopped on over to meet Shoko Nakajima. This was the second time that I met Shoko Nakajima, and I had on my Twitch jacket, and that was like the first thing she noticed, and she was like, oh, she's like, Twitch, do you stream? And I said, no, I don't stream, but I work in influencer marketing. I used to work with a lot of Twitch streamers, and like, I don't know if she fully understood what I was saying, but I think she understood influencer. So I asked her, I was like, do you play a lot of video games? She said, oh, yes. And I said, which is your favorite video game? And she said, Animal Crossing. I love Animal Crossing. So I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. And then she also said Pokemon as well. And I was like, oh, you must be excited for the new Pokemon in 2027. She said, yes, too far away. Can't wait that long. Too far. And then she said, have you heard? She's like, right now I'm playing Pokemon Champions. Have you heard of it? I was like, yes, I know Pokemon Champions. And I said, what about Pokopia? It's like Pokemon meets Animal Crossing combined. She's like, oh my God, I love Pokopia. It was just like a fun interaction. I didn't really have a plan for what I wanted to say or ask Shoko. And it just turned into this really great back and forth because I think she's just a big nerd, and she noticed my hoodie, and just kind of the conversation went from there. And it's just this really cool organic moment between us. She was wearing this like crazy looking matching M&M World hoodie and shorts. Just a heck of a fun person, just super nice and nerdy, but like in the best possible way. After Shoko, popped on over to Mizuki, no pun intended. The popping sugar rabbit, didn't mean to do that. This was my second time meeting Mizuki. Asked me if I enjoyed the shows. Of course, I told her yes. I did also tell her that I was in Texas and I saw her jump off of the stage in Dallas. And I was like, you are crazy. And she said, no. She was laughing. She was like, no, not crazy. Angel. I was like, okay. I made a comment about her match from the previous day, the 3-way. And I said, you also jumped off the ramp yesterday. And she pointed out to Yamashita and Watanabe, and she called them both monsters. She's like, monster, which is kind of like a funny callback. I don't think she did this intentionally. I don't think she remembered me, but I met her the previous year in Las Vegas when she was the champion, and she was positioned nearby Miyu Watanabe. And her and I spoke about the match she had last year in Vegas against Yamashita, and she said, oh, Miyu is a monster. And I happened to point to Miyu Watanabe as well, because prior to that Vegas show last year was when she took the title off Watanabe, and she had called Watanabe a monster. They had this back and forth about monster versus princess. And I remember giving her a chuckle because I said, oh, this Miyu, also a monster. And she was laughing and laughing. So I got a lot out of the conversation with her saying that the Miyus were monsters, even if she didn't. but she ended up saying monster, monster, angel, and pointed to herself. I was like, okay, Mizuki. I did say, hey, when I met you in Vegas last year, you had the title. She's like, I know, very sad. I don't have it. I was like, well, soon you'll get the title back again. We ended up doing the pion pose together in our picture. And I have to say, her English is definitely better than it was last year. It's not great, but she can certainly hold a conversation much better than she could last year. Mizuki is like the most positive and the most bubbly person that there is. Just incredibly happy-go-lucky and smiley. Just a delight to meet Mizuki. Rounded out this meet and greet session with Wakana. And similar to Yuki Arai, I said that I had met Wakana back in Austin. And I said, I don't know if you remember, but I spoke with you about Dekamori Hunter. And the second I said it, she was like, oh my God, yes, I do remember that I met you before. So we were talking a little bit about that. And I said, Wakana, I have to ask you, you went to the Heart Attack Grill yesterday and got the biggest burger I've ever seen in my entire life. How did you eat that burger? And without missing a beat, she basically mimed. She took the burger, she turned it sideways, and then she ate it in sections. And I was like, how? I was like, how in the world? And she goes, after I went for donuts. I was like, you're crazy, girl. That's wild. She asked me what I ate yesterday, and I said Panda Express. And then she said, oh, I love orange chicken. And I was like, I love Panda Express too, Wakana. And I said, I happened to see you yesterday. You were walking around in the food court. She said, yes, I was doing research. And then I said, well, what did you end up eating? And she said, I went and got this big pizza for lunch. So if you're keeping track, she ate a large pizza all on her own, then went to the Heart Attack Grill and ate like an 8-layered cheeseburger, and then got some donuts. So only in Wakana's stomach can that go down. And I said, Wakana, how do you do this? Like, where do you put all this food? And she just patted her stomach. I was like, okay, Wakana. I said, you have to work out every day. And she said, yes. She's like, I work out a lot. I work out every day. An incredibly fun interaction. Wakana is so friendly. I think she really knows the appeal that she has in America, whether it's the food thing or the wrestling or the modeling that she does. She spent a lot of time in Las Vegas alone. She was posting a lot of pictures and videos online just alone, going out to eat, sightseeing. I think she jumped off the Strat. She did some sort of an experience at the Strat. And after Vegas week, she posted this really long message about how it was her goal to step out of her comfort zone, do things alone in a foreign country where she didn't really have a great grasp of the language. And I think that's really admirable. I think she had a heck of a time accomplishing that goal, doing all these fun things. And I remember thinking, like, she's alone all the time. Like, doesn't she have friends? Like, I'll hang out with Wakana. I won't jump off the Strat, but I'll certainly go to eat. But it was so cool to just see her say, to post this about wanting to stretch her comfort zone, step out of her comfort zone, stretch her boundaries. And I think she accomplished that. She did so many cool things. And I hope that she realizes that that was such a cool thing to do, that she accomplished that goal she set out for herself. And again, I think that's very, very admirable. She posts a lot on social media. I think she was just putting up some like shorts about her Vancouver trip. So perhaps we'll see some from Las Vegas as well. Day 2 at the meet and greets was definitely much less busier than day 1. Some of the girls actually got to wrap early because it was less busy, which was always great. I'm really glad that TJPW did 2 days of meet and greets because it just makes it easier. There was a time constraint on both days, so it was nice to be able to like break up personally for me, to break up who I wanted to see on different days. But I know a lot of people that were there. I saw people in line that wanted to meet all of them, all 18 of the women. That's a tough task when you want to really have a conversation with them and get your money's worth. So I think it's really cool that TJPW tacked on this extra experience, and it ended up being pretty low lift for some of the girls being able to dip out early. This day was also the day that Stardom ran their show, so in between ended up going for lunch at a place called Tim Ho Wan in the Palms. It was like a dim sum restaurant. Went with Blitzball champ Jason Ingram, Hendricks, Justin Stein from Ressera. Really, really great food, just like a good lunch with some buddies. Stardom went down from the same venue as TJ around 3 p.m. sat front row again, was seated next to both Blitz and Justin from Wresera. A really great show. Some great tag team action, some great 6-person tag team action. Mina Shirakawa was on this. Always great to see Mina again. Still very, very over with the Stardom crowd. I was wearing my Suzu Suzuki t-shirt on this day, so Suzu Suzuki was very excited to see that. Show stealer, though, of this one, Rina, one-on-one with Athena. Exceptional match. You have to go out of your way to see that. We also got an unannounced appearance from Tekla, which was really cool to see. She beat the crap out of Okada once again. Saya Ida and Alex Windsor went one-on-one for the Strong title. Very strong style wrestling matchup. Good contest. And then a lot of AEW talent in the main event. Chris Statlander and the Babes of Wrath, Harley Cameron and Willow Nightingale. I'd only seen Willow before, so really cool to see like Athena and Chris Statlander and Harley Cameron. Those 3 went up against Neo Genesis. Interesting main event, but a good main event. Very cool to see those AEW ladies. Bozilla was also in attendance here. And also Fuwa-chan as well. Fuwa-chan had to not like cancel her trip, but she was not able to get a visa in time. She was supposed to work this show, but she ended up getting some sort of like a special emergency visa. Fuwa-chan was so nice. She wasn't taking pictures or anything. I don't know if it was because like she didn't want to get in trouble visa-wise or if she just didn't want to take pictures, but she was very friendly. She was talking with fans. Her English is incredible. Apparently she's like trilingual or something. But just a really cool person. You could tell someone who is like, she knows her position within Stardom and she respects all of these people that came before her, despite having such like an internet presence. She might even be bigger than some of the people in Stardom, but just a really cool person to meet and say a quick hello to. The Stardom show got over around 5 o'clock. No meet and greets. Stardom did their meet and greets independent of their event. They were at Wrestlecon. I kind of just had to book it out of there as fast as possible because I had a ticket up at the Bazaar Bar once again for a 6 p.m. bell time for Pridestyle Pro Wrestling. This was my first time at a Pridestyle show. It felt very indie, more indie than like West Coast or Pandemonium, just like a very different feel to it. They also kept the lights off for the entire show, which I thought was kind of odd. It was kind of hard to see what was happening in the ring. I honestly can't imagine it looks good on camera. And I don't think the wrestlers could really see either. I was watching this show with a couple of friends, Hendrix and Ref Mike again, and I was making conversation with Mike, and I was like, do you think the wrestlers can see? He's like, absolutely not. He's like, I've been in situations like this before. You can't. If you can't see them from here, they can't see each other. I don't know why they did it that way. I don't know why they didn't turn the lights on. All the other shows I was at in this venue had lights on the ring, so I'm not sure what that was all about. The matches here were fine. Everybody worked really hard. There was some comedy, some typical wrestling. I didn't recognize a lot of the names, but I won't say that I had a bad time. It was just a little bit of a soft hit show compared to some of the others. I do think the lighting really took me out of it. Maybe that's like a silly thing to say, but just an off-putting experience. The reason I went to this show was because Miyu Watanabe was on it. She had a singles match with Tanaya, someone that I was not very familiar with, but it was quite a good match. It might have been the match of the night, if not for the main event, which had Johnnie, Robbie, and Chris Nasty in it, and they put on one heck of a show. I might have appreciated that more had I known more of the lore of Pridestyle or maybe a little bit more about Chris Nasty, but a great main event. But the Miyu and Tanaya match, Miyu basically played all of her hits, but there was this one really cool spot where she was doing her power slam, and then she basically let go of Tanaya and like balanced her on her shoulder, and then she started doing the squats. And I turned to Mike and I was like, you've probably seen her more than I have, but I have never seen Miyu Watanabe do that with the power slam. And he was like, me neither. Just Miyu Watanabe, one of the strongest people ever. We talk about that all the time on the show, but never ceases to amaze me. The other really cool thing about this show was that Pridestyle was running a really cool promotion where you could book a meet and greet with Miyu afterwards, and you could get this like collectible custom trading card. And this thing was in really thick plastic. This was not your like pre-printed trading card that they said, here, Miyu, take these with you over to America. This was a custom-made card. It had Miyu on it. It had information on the back of it. It had the Pridestyle logo, so it was custom-made for this event. Of course, Miyu had autographed it. They placed it in this really nice protective plastic. And then on the back of it, it was numbered. So I think they only made like 25 of these cards. So like that alone, worth going to this show, worth the couple of extra bucks for the meet and greet. Like just a cool piece of memorabilia that I'm probably not going to find anywhere else. This show ended, it was like 9 p.m. I want to say. So I just went back to the hotel because things started to catch up to me, especially after the Marvelous night. I was just starting to be so out of it at this point. I just stopped quickly for some Bojangles and then ate my dinner and just PTFO, man. I was exhausted and I did have to get up early on Saturday as well. So I was like, let me just relax and go to bed as early as I possibly can. So Saturday, the reason I had to get up early was because I had to be over at the Horseshoe for Wrestlecon. I had 2 9 a.m. meet and greets. The Horseshoe is the old Bally's Hotel. It's like an older casino. It is like just off strip. Wrestlecon was in this huge ballroom, and I have to say, better than last year at the Westgate. Wrestlecon last year was just too confusing. There were overlapping lines. It was a smaller space. There were things on different floors. It was just all over the place. And here, they had everything in like this gigantic ballroom. It just made more sense. Something that was kind of weird, I had purchased a one-day pass for WrestleCon for Saturday, and they made you enter at 9:30 in the morning, even though the Stardom meet and greets started at 9 a.m. And like it was a perk if you purchased the 4-day pass, you got to go in at 9 a.m., you got the extra 30 minutes, but like it definitely made people think like, well, am I going to get to meet the Stardom people? I have 30 minutes to do something when I have an hour, like oddly timed. But that being said, the Stardom staff was great. No one was turned away. In fact, they were actually allowing people to purchase meet and greets for wrestlers that were sold out if time permitted, which is smart at the end of the day, right? You make more money. But the whole Stardom staff that was there was super, super accommodating, super pleasant, very nice. They were chatting it up with people in the line too about the different wrestlers and the big show that was coming up. This was before Dream Queendom, so really cool staff, really professional staff. We ended up making a new friend, Naoki, or Nick he goes by. Really cool guy, really nice to meet Nick. Shout outs to Nick. The 9 a.m. meet and greets that I had, the first one was for Aya Sakura. I love Aya. I think she's got so much charisma. I think she's also pretty underrated. Her English was okay. Not perfect, but not bad by any means. My one thing with Aya was to talk to her about her dog because she has this adorable tiny chihuahua. She posts pictures of it on Instagram all the time. And I went up to her, we said a quick hello, and I said, I have to say, I love your dog. And it took her a second to kind of realize what I was saying. And I was like, Inu, your dog. And she's like, oh. And she's like, oh, thank you so much. And then I was telling her about my dog. I showed her a picture of Mads. And she's like, oh, I love your dog. And then we just started talking about dog breeds for a while. She was like, Dachshund? Oh, Chihuahua mix? So she knew all of the dog breeds. Her English was good enough to know all of the dog breeds. But she said to me, she looked at me and she said, I love your dog. And I was like, thank you. I was like, I love your dog. She said, oh, thank you. I was like, dog people, we get each other. She was a delight. I think she was happy with how she was received. It was her first time in the States. The other person that I met at 9 a.m. was Natsupoi. Second time meeting Natsupoi on the trip. Over the moon that she was here. I said this before, but just a dream come true. I was wearing my Poi shirt once again. I mentioned how I saw her at the Wednesday Pandemonium show and just how happy I was that she made the trip. And she was so delighted to hear that. We did the Poi pose again and then hit her with the bye Poi on the way out, which again, dream come true. In between some of the meet and greets, I ended up going over to this merchandise booth that had all this like retro WWF, WCW merch. And I mean, they had everything. They had figures and magazines and booklets and DVDs and programs and t-shirts, like all original stuff that was in great condition and just really cool stuff to look at. There was so many things that I remember having as a kid, magazines and books and all this stuff. I ended up buying from them a 1991 edition of WWF magazine with Macho Man and Elizabeth on the cover. I'm a huge Macho Man Randy Savage fan. I did not grow up in the era watching him. I watched it all back as I got older. In fact, I wasn't alive when this magazine that I purchased was printed. So I don't have very many Macho Man pieces. This was super cool to get. It was like $10. It was in perfect condition, which like I'm not crazy about that. I'm not like crazy collector or anything, but just for that price, I was like, this is awesome. This is so cool to have a piece of this merchandise. That's the cool thing about Wrestlecon. Like, yes, you can do the meet and greets for a lot of people, but there's so many booths. There's like people who make artwork of wrestlers. There's the collector stuff that you can do. There's trading cards. Somebody had a booth where they were selling like wrestling themed soap. I also stopped by the booth for, I think it's pronounced Todukan shop. It's a shop out of Japan where they have all this like collector's merch and memorabilia and signed things. I ended up getting some trading cards. They also had these cardboard autographed panels, and I found one that Dump Matsumoto had autographed in 2012. They were selling it for $35, and I was like, you know what? I'm likely never going to meet Dump Matsumoto in my lifetime, even if I go to Japan, you know? So I was like, let me get this. It's this just cool autographed thing. Now I have some Dump Matsumoto merch, which like I never in a million years thought I would have that. Around 10 a.m., there was a couple of additional Stardom meet and greets. This one was for Rina. Great to meet Rina. Someone who is very young and impressionable, kind of like Uda Takami when we talked about this in the Texas recap. I hope that Rina had a good experience because she is so young and impressionable. When I met her, she asked me if I was a Rina fan, and I said, absolutely. But then she looked at my Poi shirt that I was wearing, and she was like, I don't know about that. What's that shirt all about? But we actually ended on an incredible note because as we were doing our photographs, you get two poses when you do these Stardom meet and greets. And for the second pose, she looked at me and she said, Poi pose? And I was so taken aback that she had offered to do the Poi pose. Of course, I said yes. And so I have a picture with me and Rina doing the Poi pose. It exists. There is documentation of it. And afterwards, I said, very special photograph. She looked at me straight-faced and she said, never again. It's like, oh, okay, great. One of one. Perfect. I also went over to meet the IInspiration. Wanted to meet them because they are the current tag champions for TJPW, although they did not have the belts with them. Very kind people, very unlike their characters. They were talkative and goofy and silly, of course, but like very nice, very accommodating. I spoke a lot with them about TJPW, and I told them I do a show, and I just really love their work in TJPW. They said that going to Japan for Grand Princess, it was their first time in Japan outside of WWE, so they were really excited about that. We took a picture together. We did the iconic pose. And I said, I guess we'll be seeing more of you now that you've retained these belts. And they had told me, yes, we're actually headed back in May for the May 4th Corcoran Hall show. And that was announced later on that evening, but it was really cool to hear that from them. And then here's a wild one. I ended up meeting L.A. Park, the old La Parka. I grew up watching wrestling. It was like WWE early 2000s era, like 2003, 2004 is when I got into it. And in addition to watching all of the shows live, I would go to Blockbuster and I would rent the videotapes of like old VHSs and DVDs from like late 90s. So I'd be seeing like The Rock and Mankind and Undertaker, Kane, WrestleMania like 14, 15, the Inferno match, the casket match, like that era I was just educating myself on as a young kid. I had so many action figures. I would play the video games. Like I was obsessed. Specifically, I had Day of Reckoning on GameCube. I had SmackDown vs. Raw, like the original from 2003. And I would go to the store and I would rent the Nintendo 64 games. I would rent like No Mercy, the classic, WrestleMania 2000s. And then I would also rent the WCW games, even though like I didn't know anything about WCW. I knew it was a thing that existed because they would talk about it on early 2000s WWE TV. And then I would have a couple of like video sets. Like I had like the Rey Mysterio DVD and it had like the Halloween Havoc match on it. So like I knew what WCW was, but I didn't like really know what it was, if that makes sense. And when I was playing the video games, someone that I was always drawn to in these games was La Parka. And like as a kid, I knew nothing about La Parka and how he was, his experience in Mexico. And I just thought he looked really cool because he had a skeleton costume. He would come out with the chair. He would like play the guitar on the chair and like chairman of WCW. I was like, this guy's awesome. So I just always had an affinity for him. And as I got older and I actually would go back and watch WCW matches and I was watching more of La Parka, I got to understand a little bit more about him. And I was like, he's still pretty awesome. I started to learn more about the character. Like, obviously the character of La Parka has moved on. Someone different is playing it. And like, this gentleman has rebranded himself as LA Park. I think his name is Adolfo Tapia or something like that. But I just always had this affinity because he made such an impression on me as a kid. So I was like, I have to meet La Parka. He was not very talkative. I think he's like in his 60s or something now. He wasn't unfriendly. I don't want to paint the bad picture of LA Park, but he just was very quiet. The helpers that he had at his table were very nice, very friendly. I ended up buying a LA Park t-shirt because his designs just looked super cool. I did try to engage with him in Spanish a little bit. I just walked up and I said, hola. He just kind of gave me a head nod. He's like, And then he signed the picture, or signed the portrait. We took a picture together. And I just said, gracias, señor, mucho gusto, which is, thank you, sir. Very nice to meet you. Just gave me another head nod. Didn't engage much, but like a surreal experience to meet La Parka after kind of growing up and knowing who that is. And, you know, last year in Vegas, I had some similar experiences like this. Like, I was fortunate enough to meet Jim Ross and Jerry the King, like the voices of my childhood. I was nervous when I met them. That's how incredible that experience was. Surreal to stand next to these people who I have these core memories about. Around 11 a.m., had one more Stardom meet and greet with May Seira. I wasn't originally planning to meet May, but I just kind of tacked it on the night before, and like, May is such a joy. When I met her, I mentioned the the Pandemonium show that took place on Wednesday that she was at, and I was like, I saw you at this show, and like, you happened to stand next to me. We kind of watched the show together, and one of the translators translated it for her, and she was just like, oh, get out. Like, that's so funny. How cool. So just a fun moment. We took 2 pictures together. We did the Yonoshku pose, and then we did the May Seira M. And I kind of had to validate myself here because I met May 2 years ago in Philadelphia, 2024. And May is very short. May probably comes up to my shoulders. I'm about 6 feet. So she must be maybe 5 feet tall, if that. And I felt terrible because when I took a picture with May in Philadelphia, we also did the M pose. And she had said something to me in between the pictures, and I had turned to look at her. And as I was bringing my elbow down, I bonked her on the head. And it wasn't like a hard bonk. Like, it was just like a gentle tap. But like, it was so embarrassing. And of course, it was like a Larry David moment because she didn't speak English. I didn't know how to speak Japanese. It was just this uncomfortable moment between us. It's become this like meme between my friends and I now. And in the sequence of pictures, you can actually see her like leaning farther away from me in Philadelphia. So I was like, you know what? I have to meet May again. I have to kind of right my wrongs here. I have to do another photo with the M pose. And I am very happy to announce I took a picture with May Seira. We did the M pose, and I did not attack her in any way. So kudos to that. Another thing to cross off the bucket list. If you're curious about the structure of the Stardom meet and greets and how they kind of relate over to TJPW, they're very different. The Stardom meet and greets are $50 per wrestler. It's the same type of experience. You get a signed portrait, and then you can take a photograph with the wrestler. $50 per wrestler. You do get some FaceTime with you. They engage, maybe not quite as much as TJPW, but then again, I think Stardom wrestlers are a little bit more popular, and so the lines tend to be a little bit longer, but they're all incredibly nice. The lineups for these were Poi and Aya were 9 a.m. Rina was supposed to do her meet and greet with Maki, but of course Maki had to cancel her trip due to visa issues. The 11 a.m. slot was May Seira and Hazuki. I didn't meet Hazuki just because I had met her last year in Las Vegas. And like, when it comes to these shows, you kind of got to save money somewhere, right? So I chose not to meet Hazuki. And then the 12 o'clock slot was Starlight Kid and Azumi, 2 people I had met prior. I've actually met Starlight Kid a couple of times. They sold out, so I didn't even have the chance to meet them if I wanted to. But I think it was Starlight Kid, Azumi, and then I want to say Rina as well sold out, which is great for Rina. I also stopped by a couple of indie wrestlers. I had to go over and see Johnnie Robbie. She had a small booth. And I just said, listen, man, you are the MVP of this weekend. I've seen you so many times. I've seen you at this show, this show, this show. I just started naming them all. She's like, oh my gosh, like, thank you so much for the support. And I was like, truthfully, I'm not going to these shows just to see you, but I go to all these shows and all of a sudden you appear and I'm like, oh my God, Johnny's here as well. And I meant it as a compliment. I think she took it as a compliment, but one of the hardest working people of the week for sure. One of the MVPs of the week for sure. I said, hey, can we take a photo together? I'd love to get a photo with you. And she said, yeah, absolutely. And she didn't even charge me for it. And I wanted to give her something. I wanted, because like that's how these wrestlers really make their money, make their living. But she was so grateful. She was like, you've been to so many shows and supported me. Like, don't even think about it. It's really no big deal. We spoke a little bit about her time in Japan because she's had a couple of excursions with Marvelous. She mentioned that she's going to be going back, I believe in May, to wrestle with Marvelous again. So just a super nice, super kind person. And then rounded off the Wrestlecon experience on this day by meeting Big Al, Alice Crowley. Had to go over and see Big Al. She was dressed in this like beautiful black dress, looked gorgeous, very unlike like what her character would dress as. She was great. I told her about the TJPW podcast that I do. I said, I loved your time in TJPW. I know it was pretty short, but I loved the Battle of the Alices. And then she told me this wonderful story. She said, when I was first booked, she's like, I didn't know much about Arisu Endo. I just knew the name, but I knew the name Arisu. She's like, I didn't know that meant Alice. And when I first saw some of the materials, they were billing me as American Alice. And she was like, did they just get my name wrong? Or maybe this is easier for Japanese people to understand, American Alice. She's like, 'cause I'm Big Al, I'm not American Alice. And then she said, once she went over there, she met a lot of the women and realized, oh, like I have, my name translates into Japanese and it's Arisu. And so then she said it all clicked for me once I got over there. But she said she loved her time in TJPW, loved working with Arisu. She said Arisu was fantastic. Their match, I recall, it was really, really great. It was one of Arisu's first defenses, if not her first defense. And I told her, like, you did a heck of a job, and really just loved the whole gimmick of American Alice, Japanese Alice, Battle of the Alices. It was just such a fun TJPW coded thing to do. Finished off the day with a delicious dinner. Myself and a few friends, Jason, String Six Splash, Hendrix, Jason, Blitzball Champ, and our new friend, Naoki, Nick. We ended up going to a restaurant called Chubby Cattle, which was all-you-can-eat Japanese barbecue. And this was out of this world. There was all kinds of meats and sushi and dim sum. Just like a wonderful dinner, good friends, good conversation, good food, good laughs, just a good time, just a great time. That's what these weekends and these experiences are all about, right? Just having a great time with friends over something that you love, whether that be food or wrestling or whatever it is. After dinner, I just had a chill night. I needed to just like go sit in my room and do nothing. I was so overstimulated from like 3 or 4 days. So I just got back to the hotel. It was like 7:30, relaxed, spent some time with my family, my dog, finally got around to filming the instant reaction video. I just ran out of time and just was going and going and going. So apologies again, that got out so late, but hopefully it was a nice window into the TJPW show. Sunday, last full day, again, got up super early, wanted to get over to Wrestlecon at 9 a.m. because I had a very short window with all of the things I wanted to do before the 12 p.m. Spark Joshi show. So I got up around 6:15 in the morning, got over to the Horseshoe at like 8. It was a free admission day, so they just opened the doors for everybody at 9 a.m. 9 a.m. for Stardom was Saya Ida, and then it was supposed to be Yuria Hime, who also had visa issues. I didn't have a ticket for Ida. I had met Ida last year, so ended up going back to that Todukan booth. The day before, they had this style book from Kairi Sane. I'm a huge Kairi Sane fan. I don't know if I've mentioned that on the show before, but I love, love, love Kairi Sane. They were selling her style book, and it's like this thick book, pictures and different like texts and fun facts and questions and answers and things in it. It was autographed by Kairi. And I saw this the day before on Saturday, and I was like, oh my God, I need to buy this. it was $140. And as I was looking at everything else, I was like, it's $140. Like, I don't know, with all the other money I'm spending on meet and greets and food and tickets and all this stuff, like, again, you got to find places to save some money, you know? It was literally one of the only things I was thinking about the rest of the day. And I was like, I should have bought that book, you know? Like, I obviously really wanted it. And so as the evening went on, I was like, you know what? If it's there tomorrow, I'm going to buy it. I clearly want it. I'm a firm believer, like, trust your gut. If you really want something that badly, buy it or go to the show or get that dinner, you know, whatever it is, because you get a much more memorable experience by doing it or buying it than that FOMO experience that's just going to stick with you. Like, I should have done that. I should have done that. Life's all about like living it, right? So I went back over to this booth, and this was like, it must have been destiny, because I went over there and the booklet was dropped down to $110. And I was like, sold. Take my money. I'm taking this Kairi book. So I'm so excited that I have this signed Kairi style book, because I'm thinking to myself, like, she's in WWE. I met her once at WWE World. I got about 3.5 seconds of FaceTime with her. Who knows if she's going to be in WWE forever? Will she go back to Japan? Will I ever get a chance to meet her and get her autograph? Of course, this was before the release news that came out. So this take has aged a little bit, but I said, you know what? I really want this. And it was so worth it. I'm so happy to have that booklet now. I also want to give 2 quick shout outs, because this day I met a couple listeners in kind of walking around Wrestlecon. So shout outs to Luke and Chris. Appreciate you guys listening. So cool to meet you both. Really wanted to meet JRod. That was one of my goals, was to have a conversation with JRod. And I ended up kind of walking around with Ref Mike on this day. And Mike was like, oh, come on. I'll JRod. Like, I'll make an intro. JRod had like just shown up to the con. So I was like, hey, it's so nice to meet you. I'm so-and-so. I'm good friends with Mike. Loved the interview that you did with Matt Turner at Talk Joshi. Like, really good friends with Matt Turner. JRod was the nicest person on the face of the earth. I was like, listen, you get set up. Like, I will come back. I would love to chat with you, but like, eat your breakfast, kind of get settled. Mike and JRod ended up talking to some of the TJPW girls that were still left around. It was Misao, Shoko Nakajima, Yuki Aino, and Yamashita. They hung around a little bit later because they were heading on over to the European tour that they were doing. So I left Mike and JRod because I had a couple of 10 a.m. meet and greets. Rina Yamashita and Suzu Suzuki. First time meeting Rina Yamashita. She was great. Rina's a little bit older compared to some of the other Stardom girls, but she kind of had that like grizzled vet mystique to her. She had so many scars, like all over her back, all over her face. She actually has a scar running like right down the middle of her forehead, just from all the death matches and the bleeding. And I was like, oh my God, like that, you just live with that. Like, that's what you're living with for the rest of your life. But she was super cool, man. I wore my Suzuki Suzu t-shirt. She's like, oh, cool shirt. She's like, but you need Mi Vida Loca. And I was like, yeah, I got to get that. And when we went to do our picture, was just doing a thumbs up pose because I saw her doing something with her hands, but I was looking at the camera. I wasn't paying attention. And the moment she saw me do the thumbs up, she turned to me. She was like, nah, 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 nah. And then she pointed to her fingers and she was flipping off the camera. And she's like, this is Rina. I was like, okay. So I have a picture of me and Rina Yamashita flipping off the camera. Very great experience. And then went over to meet Suzu. Second time meeting Suzu. I did meet her last year. And the first thing, she loved the Suzu shirt that I had on. But then she was like, old t-shirt. And I was like, I know. I think the shirt I have is from like 2023. But she's like, old t-shirt. And I said, I know, but I've been a fan for just so long. That's the thing. And I've been a fan since you won the 5-star. And she's like, oh, yes. She's like, 5-star. She's like, thank you. And then I had practiced this all day because I didn't want to mess it up. Suzuki Suzu, Akabelto, which means red belt. And she got so excited. She's like, yeah, Akabelto. Suzu is someone that just makes a lot of noises. I've learned over the past couple of times of meeting her. Suzu is someone that gets a lot of hate on social media just based on her looks. She's put on some weight over the years. And I mean, that's just a really crappy thing to do. Like, don't be that person. Don't be, crapping all over someone for how they look. Suzu is tremendous in the ring still beautiful, still awesome of a person. So just be nice to people. Don't be a-holes online. It's just so unnecessary. Did end up heading back on over to JRod. Such a lovely person, like literally one of the nicest people in the entire world. We probably spoke for like 20 minutes. She was telling me all about her extra experience at WrestleMania. Of course, we talked about TJPW, Vancouver, Vegas, her time in Japan, her match with Kira Summer, her match with Miyu Watanabe, her tag teaming with Sakura Hattori up in Vancouver, her challenge against Yuki Arai. Just so friendly, so kind. We also spoke about the cardboard cutout JRod that Miyu Watanabe had drawn back when she challenged Miyu Watanabe, and she just thought that was a hoot. Like she loved Miyu. And she was like this with everyone. This wasn't just me, knowing Ref Mike or knowing Matt Turner or something. Like, she was a genuine person. She was talking to anybody that came up to her, and just very outgoing, knew how to work a room, but in a very genuine way. JRod is also like in peak physical condition. She literally looks like an Under Armour mannequin is how I would describe her. Just a heck of a cool person to meet. I did also speak with her about potentially doing an interview. So again, card subject to change, but fingers crossed. I really would love to make that happen for all of you. We did take a picture together. We exchanged stickers. She had mini JRods. And of course, she had her JCW championship that she had just won the night before. So we have that belt in my photograph with her as well. Immediately had to book it on down to Spark Joshi, which had a 12 p.m. bell time all the way down at the HyperX Arena in the Luxor. We got there around 11:30. Doors opened up at 11. While I was waiting in line, I met two people who I see literally everywhere. I saw them last year. I've seen them on videos in Japan. I saw them all around Las Vegas this year. It got to the point where the woman was just smiling at me all the time because we bumped into each other all the time. Her name was Donna, and for the life of me, I can't remember her partner's name, but they are the nicest people ever. I originally crossed paths with them 2025 Las Vegas at the TJPW show. They rolled streamers for almost everybody in attendance, and they labeled them just like incredibly nice people, like really cool people. It was so nice to like finally meet them. The HyperX Arena, really cool venue. There were two stories to it. There was a bar, a kitchen, really big stage, big screen. This was the show that the podcast sponsored, so it was super cool to see the logo all over the place. I did get a chance to say a very quick hello to CB before the show happened. Such a sweet person. So gracious of her to take like 5 minutes to say hello to me, thank me for sponsoring the event. She was like running around like a mad person because it was before her show. So just so delightful to meet her. I'm so grateful to be able to spend even just like 5 minutes with her. Very good show, I have to say, for the last show that I went to. I think this was the best Spark Joshi show yet. They had a number of people on this card: Natsupoi, Alexis Lee, Starlight Kid, Azumi, Aya Sakura, Siri Namba was their ring announcer. They had a terrific main event between Hazuki and Jada Stone. They tore the house down. Spark Joshi also works a lot with some American indie wrestlers. Erica Demia is someone who's there quite often. Brittany Blake was there. They also brought in Super P from the Philippines. I didn't know anything about Super P, but Super P was awesome. She's like this Filipina superhero. A lot of my friends were like, you're going to love Super P. I loved Super P. She was so cool. I didn't have any formal meet and greets for this event, but I did stop over to Namba, just gave her like a brief hello before she jumped on the stage, and then went up to her after the show. Just a quick little goodbye to coordinate some time to do an interview. And Namba, just such a hardworking person, just a delight to talk to all the time. Like I said earlier, if you have a chance to meet Seira Namba, definitely do so. She is incredibly kind, incredibly hardworking, incredibly professional. And the last person that I had to meet, Alexis Lee, I had promised her that I would stop by and buy some merchandise. Again, she had a crazy long line, but was really glad to get a shirt from her, some stickers. Again, just a lovely person. We had a really nice chat about all of her matches. So cool to see her get so many bookings on this trip, and just how popular she was. She had the longest lines, and I was like, dude, you're killing it. Like, I can't wait for you to come back. Hope it's soon. I hope to see you in America again. Just a really cool person, almost like a new friend, if you will. After the Spark Joshi show, that was when I conducted my interview with Ref Mike. Again, that's on your feeds just as a couple of days ago, so go ahead and give that one a listen. And afterwards, we just kind of hung around inside of the HyperX arena. They were tearing the ring down and everything, but they threw WrestleMania up on the screen, and I was there for so long with Mike interviewing that they didn't kick us out, so we were kind of watching WrestleMania before and after a little bit. The Luxor, I stayed at the Luxor like a number of years ago. It's a little bit dated nowadays, but they had it themed out for wrestling. So they were playing like wrestler entrance music on the casino floor. The bar on the casino floor was all themed for WWE. So kind of a neat little thing. I had to get out of there pretty quickly though. I did have dinner reservations at 6:15. My family and I went to the buffet at the Wynn. Delicious, delicious food. All sorts of seafoods and pastas and meats. They had Caribbean dishes. They had Asian dishes, all sorts of desserts. Just an incredible, incredible meal. And the Wynn is just a very, very nice looking hotel too. After dinner, just went back to the room, and that's when the blues kind of started to hit. Spent some time just kind of looking back at all of the pictures I took, listening back to my interviews, and just kind of slowly coming back down to earth, but truly an incredible, incredible weekend. Monday was my final day, and quite frankly, I didn't have much planned, but the only thing I wanted to do before I left was go to Bagel Mania, because people talk about Bagel Mania so much. It's right next to the convention center, and it's basically like this Jewish deli, but they have bagels and all sorts of baked goods and coffees and all sorts of stuff. Walked over in the morning, got an absolutely delicious bagel sandwich, and then also got a black and white for the car ride, which was so worth it. The black and white was delicious. Just went back to the hotel, ate our breakfast, checked out around like 10:30, 11 in the morning, and then hit the road. Like 3 hours and change, 3 hours, 20 minutes to get back to LA, and definitely like a longer ride than the way in, even though it is like the exact same length of time, just a lot less excitement. The blues start to hit, right? So definitely dragged a little bit more than the departing trip. And then just got back home and unpacked and settled in and immediately went back to work on Tuesday. But overall, just an incredible trip. What an incredible weekend of wrestling and meeting wrestlers and meeting friends that like I hardly ever get to see, making new friends, delicious food. That's always a big thing for me. Just memorable experiences. When I checked into the hotel for Vegas, I didn't feel like I was in Vegas a year ago. It had just made such an impression on me, and it was such a lasting memory. And Philly too, like I can vividly remember Philly and my interactions with people last year in Vegas, all of the fun and exciting things I did. And like, I think I'm going to remember this year just as much. It was just as impressionable. I will wrap this up by saying, if you have the means, first of all, thank you if you've listened to all of this. But secondly, if you have the means to go and see your favorite wrestlers, go and see some of these shows, like do the indie wrestling thing, it is so, so worth it. Nothing against WWE, not making a statement about WWE. I happen to do no WWE things on this trip, but I had friends who did a couple of things. I had friends who went to Mania. I just personally didn't want to pay the prices for it. You can totally go to a weekend like this, have a great, fun experience without doing WWE things, without breaking the bank. I am here to tell you that it is possible. A hell of a trip. It has been very sobering and a very hard crash to come back to the real world, but I always struggle with this. I think a lot of people do, right? Thinking, that was vacation. That was not everyday life. Everyday life is not meeting your favorite wrestlers and going to wrestling shows and going out with friends, right? That would be great if that was what life was, but that's vacation. That's not the real world. So as I assimilate back into my routine and back into work and still kind of come down now, maybe even like a week or so later, just trying to look forward to what's next. I am recording this the day after All-Star Grand Queendom, so needless to say, I am exhausted yet again. But really looking forward to what's on the horizon for TJPW. I hope to see some future shows. Would love to continue doing episodes like this. I hope you guys enjoyed this. This is a lot of like me and personal stuff. But I hope that this is interesting. I know a lot of you spoke about whether it was emails or social media messages or even coming up to me in Las Vegas to say how much you enjoyed the Texas recap. So here's a supersized Vegas one for you. All of that being said, though, go ahead and grab your cold spray and your ice packs because that will bring us to the end of this month's bonus episode. Like I said a million times now, Vegas was such an incredible experience on so many levels. I really enjoyed looking back on it with all of you. I hope you did too. And if you did, make sure you hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts for future bonus episodes covering rewinds, interviews, in-person shows, and of course, the weekly Tokyo Joshi pod dropping every Friday, where we cover the news, the recent shows, and the graduates. You can follow our show on social media at Tokyo Joshi Pod on Instagram, TikTok, and X. You can also drop us an email, tokyojoshipod@gmail.com. But above all else, remember to keep your hearts burning, stay magical, my friends, and we'll see you next time on the Tokyo Joshi Pod.